Hare Om. Namaste. My name is Swami Manamurti Saraswati. I'm just going to do a talk tonight about an experience that I had 40 years ago, a very long time ago. And um, I should have done this talk possibly on Christmas Day or around that time, because it sort of concerns an experience or a psychic experience I had with the statue of Jesus. Uh, so I'll tell that story and a couple of others. It's quite an interesting experience, and I've named this talk Samyama. And if anybody knows about the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, you can look up what Samyama means. It's a word that means like a psychic unification, like going from beyond sensory withdrawal, pratyahara, you've crossed that stage into dharana, dhyana, samadhi. And it's a flow of consciousness, not a doorway, another doorway, another doorway. It's just a flow. So I've made a few notes on this talk a few days ago that I shared on Facebook. So before I get started, I'll go through just to give you a bit of a background about myself. I'll just read through some of the notes. I've got some on my desk I can read through, and then I'll just ad lib it and go for it. So at a young age, I was brought up in a Christian or Roman Catholic family as a very young child in Sydney. And when I was young, my mum took me to a small Catholic church in a town called Campbelltown in southwest Sydney, where we lived. I was born in Randwick, up in the eastern suburbs, but Dad had to move down to Campbelltown to take up this job as an electrician and electrical engineer down there. So we moved down there, and Mum started taking us to Sunday school on Sundays. And for many years, we went there on Sundays, and like we learned all about the Bible, Christian Bible. And so you get the message when you hear this talk that I was sort of born into a Christian family and became a sort of Hindu yogi sort of hybrid. So I'm Christian, Hindu, yogi hybrid somehow. You could call me that or anything, what you really like. But I'm going to go through the story, but up until about high school, we were pretty churchy. Went to church on Sundays and learned about the Bible at school. So, and I really loved this small church. There was beautiful, like stained glass windows with pictures of all the saints, Christian saints, and there was a lot of statues. And statues of Jesus really appealed to me. And you'll hear in this talk how one of these statues or a statue of Jesus had a big effect on me later on in life when I was 27 actually in 1984. And why I'm doing this talk, about a week before before Christmas, I had a dream where I saw two hands just sticking up like this, and they had holes in them, like Jesus's crucifixion, and I could see through the holes in the hands, palms of the hands. So just like on this statue, you see the nails through the hands. So that's what I was actually seeing in a dream. So that prompted me, like I'm getting some sort of message to maybe speak about my sort of experiences of Jesus, or round about a few experiences that I've had related to Jesus. And I think I mentioned I did an interview back in September, I think it was, with the Open Loops host Greg Bornstein from New York. It was about a 2-hour interview, but in that I discussed a bit of my earlier life and how I got onto yoga, and I mentioned that back in the 70s, I found myself going to a lot of different late 70s to early 80s. I found myself going to a lot of churches because there was a lot of friends that I had was starting to talk about. They must have been going through their own sort of awakening, some sort of awakening, in their heart chakra or something, and they were receiving the Holy Spirit, and they were talking about seeing the light. So that really interested me as well. So I went along to a few of the churches for a few years and, had different experiences of that. So this is in early days, late 70s, nearly 50 years ago, at least 40 something years ago. And back in 1984, I'll get to near this experience. I was going in 1984. I was going to an IYTA, International Yoga Teaching Association class. You might say of classic Hatha Yoga class. That was traditionally what they taught, Hatha Yoga, the IYTA teachers. And I had a really great teacher, Suzanne Brown, and I started going to her classes probably about 1981, one class a week. Then 1982, I was doing 2 classes a week. 1983, 3 classes a week. I was really getting right into it. And in 1984, Suzanne asked me, would I like to go along to a long weekend retreat with the other yoga teachers. They were doing yoga teacher training retreat for teachers. I wasn't a teacher, I was just a student of a teacher. So she invited me along. And one day she arrived. I lived in Nowra, about 3 hours drive south of Sydney. So she picked me up and we drove up to Wahroonga, it was, on the north shore of Sydney. Really beautiful suburb, upmarket sort of suburb, to a private school. And to me, it looked like a Christian monastery. And I think it was called Abbotsleigh. I wrote it down here somewhere. Abbotsleigh Private College or a seniors school. And it was a really big, beautiful, it looked like a monastery to me, but it was a school where, like a boarding school. And later on that afternoon or evening, we had a class and I met the retreat teacher who was a male. And he was a very interesting person. And he'd been doing yoga about 25 or might have been 30 years, he said, 30 years. And he was also a yoga teacher and a Catholic priest, which was really interesting. I'd never heard of anything like that before, Catholic priest of 30 years and being a yoga teacher. And that was really interesting. And I'll just backtrack a couple of days. Before that retreat, a few days before, one of my friends, and my best friend, who got me onto yoga in 1981, he said to me that week it was, before the retreat, a few days before the retreat, he said to me, there's a Swami has started to do some teaching just south of Nowra. Do you want to come along and meet the Swami? So I said, yeah, for sure, I'll go along. So I went down and, the first thing we noticed was the teacher in orange robes, guru robes, a female, Swami Satchamurti Saraswati, really great teacher, and Swami really dedicated, lifelong dedication to yoga, and a sannyasin disciple of Swami Satchidananda. And at that class, apart from meeting her, which was really fantastic, and it was a milestone in my journey, you might say, because that was when I sort of got some sort of connection with the lineage and Bihar School of Yoga. And I picked up the book of that she had in her bag, and there's the book there, Teachings of Swami Satchidananda, who became my guru much later on, or a few years later. Volume 1, Teachings of Swami Satchidananda, Volume 1. And I picked up that book, and I didn't have time to read it, but I just looked at a few pages, and I put that away, and I took it to this retreat, which was a few days later. And I put it in my bag, I took it away to the retreat, thinking I might have a bit of time over those 3 days to have a bit of a look at the book. And what happened during this class, I'm just going back 40 years in my memory, like I met the teacher. He was a male. There was only one other male apart from me and the teacher, the head teacher, the lead teacher. There was one other male, an Indian guy called Ram Das, and there was three males, and there was about 70 females. So I thought that was really amazing. I was a bit awestruck, really, but I thought, wow, this is really crazy. There's only 3 guys. There was 2 guys plus the teacher who was a male, and like 70 females. But they really sort of calmed me down and settled me down, because I thought, well, this is pretty different. I've never experienced anything like this before. I'd never been to a retreat or a weekend thing. I've just been going to yoga classes. And this was something really different. And we're doing all these different classes. But anyway, the ladies really made me feel comfortable. And the next day, I think it was the next day, apart from all the different yoga classes that we did a Feldenkrais method class, which was really, really different. And just before that class, we did a bit of an experiment where we just we all went for a walk around the monastery or the school, just for a walk about half an hour before this Feldenkrais class. And I walked down the hallway and into this room, and there was a little chapel inside this room where people go and pray. So I walked in there and just had a look inside the chapel, and there was a statue of Jesus in there. And I just looked at it for a couple of minutes. And then I just walked out and back to the room where everyone was, waiting for us to regroup before the Feldenkrais class. And in this class, we all lay down, or in little groups. There might have been 5 or 6 of us in each little group, and one person was laying down, and there'd be 5 people around you, and there's all these little groups around the whole room. And I was one of those people. Right, I'm laying down, and my arms are stretched out like a relaxation practice, right? I'm laying down, and then I had to close my eyes, but the next thing, there was 4 ladies, one had each arm and one had each leg, right? And there was a lady at the crown of my head. So I'm laying on my back flat on the floor, and there's ladies on each arm and each foot, and they're massaging my feet and hands and stroking, my hands and stuff like that. I don't know what they were doing, because my eyes were closed, like some sort of touch I don't know much about this Feldenkrais method, but some sort of touch therapy or something like that, or some sort of energy work. And then all of a sudden, I felt like my whole body, they all pulled out my arms and legs, and the lady at the crown of my head, they lifted my whole body off the floor. And when they did that, it felt simply amazing, like felt like I was just floating in heaven, like levitating or something. And I'd never experienced anything like that. Anyway, after that, like, we all got a turn, and then we all laid down and did a yoga nidra practice, and like a relaxation practice. But this was a guided. It wasn't a yoga nidra practice. Like, I'd only ever done yoga nidra once properly that week when I met that Swami a couple of days previous, and this was a bit of a different method with a guided visualization. And I'd never done anything like that before, visualization. And in this guided meditation technique, we were asked to recall where we'd been for our walk, right? So we all went for a walk before. So I recalled that in my mind as I was laying down there in Yoga Nidra, relaxing, deeply relaxing after this Feldenkrais method as well. Really deeply relaxing, possibly for the first or second time in my life. And what happened? I was. I don't know if you've done any listeners or have done any visualizations things before or methods before, but I was recalling myself walking down this hallway, visualizing. I could see myself, walking down the hallway like I had been before. And I turned, and then I walked into the chapel, like a small church inside the monastery, and further ahead, about 20 meters ahead, was a statue of Jesus, and I walked closer to the statue, and then when I got halfway into the room, then something happened that I want to tell everybody about. I've never spoken about this before. Only a couple of people know about this. Something happened to me, and I went straight like that inside the statue of Jesus. And I was shocked, as I'd never experienced anything like this. It was some sort of altered state, and I went inside the statue. Like, I'm not outside looking at the statue, I'm inside the statue. Like, I projected inside the statue, my consciousness or astral body or whatever it was, Kundalini, astral body, projected inside the statue. I'm inside the statue looking out. I could see the statue from where, like, my eyes were stuck open inside the statue. And that was such an amazing experience. And I was wondering if I'd ever get out of the statue, because I was just inside the statue. And I was just frozen, like inside the statue with my eyes open, just looking, sort of looking around inside the statue. And I don't know, I can't remember exactly what happened after that, but then my mind went back to the class, and then the class where everyone was doing the practice, and then the practice ended. I remember hearing the teacher's voice, and then the practice ended, and then we all had to sit up, like we're laying down. We all had to sit up and then turn around and speak to the person who was right beside us about our experience. So I first spoke to, so the lady next to me told me about her experience, and then it was my turn to tell her about my experience, which was just off the charts, amazing, altered ex- experience. So I told this yoga teacher and lady, and she got up and told the whole class, that David's just experienced something. And she said, I've been a yoga teacher for 25 years. I've never heard of any experience like this ever before. And she told the whole class about it. And I was sort of embarrassed, but um, that's exactly what happened. And I told her about it. And anyway, just cut a long story short, um, after the class, we all went back to our rooms, like the dormitory rooms, and I got my book out and started reading my book again. I was pretty happy just to read my book that I got on Swami Satchidananda. Started reading that in my room by myself, and then there's a knock on the door. A little while later, half hour later or so, or later on in the night, and I opened the door, and it was the father or the priest who was running the retreat. And I invited him in, and he came in and sat down on my bed, and we're talking. And we're talking about this experience that I had, and he was just over the moon, so happy that I'd had this sort of spiritual experience in his chapel, in his church. And I didn't know what it was, what this experience was, what happened to me. And then later on, the priest left after a little while. We were just talking for a little while, and then he blessed me, and then he left. And then later on, there was another knock on the door, and the other male that was on the retreat, Ram Das, he came into my room, and he saw the book that I was reading, and he asked me about it, and I said, "Yeah, this week I've met a Swami this week," and that was we started talking, and he said, "If you're serious about yoga, make your way up to the Satchidananda Ashram." So from that day, I didn't leave the Swamis. Like from that day, 40 years ago, and that was some real experience. And at the end of that retreat, I remember standing up. I had a really big awakening in my heart then, a big heart chakra, a really big one. And I remember standing up in front of all these women, like there's about 80, we're all saying goodbye. There's about 70 people there. And I said to all these women, "I love you all," and I thought, what's this crazy words coming out of my mouth saying this, like, I don't know what I was saying, like I'd never spoken like that in my whole life. Like I might have spoken like that to my wife, but like uh, I had a wife and child, and but here I am talking to all these women I don't even know and telling them all that I love them. So I thought that was really strange, and I thought, what's this about? Anyway, I'll get back to what I wrote down the other day. Um, so I guess what happened after we drove back home, that was the last time during that drive, I just contemplated a lot, and I never went back to my same teacher again. Right? That was the end of my relationship with my teacher that I really loved my teacher, Suzanne Brown. She was a great teacher. But after that, I only went to the Swamis, started going to the Swamis classes. But I had a great teacher before that, Suzanne, and but I started going to all the Swami's classes, once a week, and then I went up to Wollongong ashram all the time, and then up to the other ashrams. But what happened? I guess my teacher Suzanne, who invited me to that yoga teacher IYTA retreat, she probably guessed that I was destined to be a yoga teacher, because of my dedication to yoga. And it was sort of sad to say goodbye, but another chapter in my life opened then. Um, yeah, so I was just going to talk about that. I mentioned that what happened there, and there was that was the end of that virtual experience. Like, I had a very long relationship with the Swamis after that. I'm a Swami myself, so you know it really had a big effect on me. And in 1997, it was the last time I met my guru. Um, I mentioned that. Sorry, that was 1984. 1986. My guru appeared to me, Swami Satchidananda, that you see there in that picture there. My guru, Swami Satchidananda, appeared at my bedhead. Darshan is like a hologram from the waist up, and he froze my mind, and he's talking to me telepathically. And half an hour after that, I've spoken about this many times in the last year, I suppose. I had a Kundalini awakening. That was the start of my journey, really deep journey from that day on. And that was 1986. And in July that 86, right? So same month my daughter was born, actually, and a lot of experiences. Anyway, 2 years later, I went to India, met Swami Satchidananda, asked him about all these Kundalini experiences that I've had in 86 and all that. So I've spoken about all that before, so I won't get onto that. So, because I'm talking about Jesus and Christianity mainly in this talk. So 1997 was the last time I met Swami Satchidananda, and he was holding a Christian mass, which was really amazing. He's Paramahansa, the highest sannyasin, Paramahansa, right? And he was living as an avadhut yogi. And there was a ceremony there, went for a few days, called the Cosmic Mass, and it was led by Reverend Shoemaker, who was an Australian lady priest. She was doing the ceremony with Swami Satchidananda. That was really amazing. And one of the things that Swami Satchidananda said to all of us Westerners, like there was hundreds and hundreds of us Westerners were there to see Swami Satchidananda, because at that stage he was, like he only saw people for darshan once a year at the end of the year, November or December. And Swami Satchidananda said to us Westerners, never turn your back on the religion that you were born into. And that was a big revelation, like I was a Swami, and I sort of turned my back on Jesus back in the 80s. And here it was, 97. And like I was going to the churches, and then I ended the Swamis. And now here's my guru of all the Swamis telling me this. And that was 1997. So in 2011, I was in Sweden doing a 3-month Kriya Yoga retreat with Swami Janakananda. And in that Kriya Yoga retreat, once a week, he had a pyramid there, a float tank. You've seen those sensory deprivation tanks. Maybe you don't see them, but they were quite popular back in the day, back in the 80s and 90s. I remember one of my friends bought one. He was pretty wealthy. He bought one. But anyway, this is the first one I've ever seen, 2011 at the ashram in Sweden, float tank. So it's got saline water, a foot deep, and um, body temperature, the water's body temperature, and it was pyramid shaped, 10-foot square base, full of saline salt water. So your body floats. That's why they call it the float tank. No noise can get in, no light can get in. It's dark, pitch black. I'm in there for an hour, and I'm in this float tank, and voice comes into my head. First time I've ever heard voice in my head. Voice came into my head on this retreat. I'm about a few weeks into this retreat, 3 weeks into this retreat. Jesus was happy that I came on this retreat. Jesus. So I hadn't heard anything about Jesus for a long time, and or even thought about it. So Jesus was happy that I was on this retreat. And that was 2011. So 2012, like I finished that retreat. 2012, I went back to India twice, and I've talked about that before. Had some big experiences. 2013, I went back to India again for 4 months, and during that stay, I went out to meet a yogi that I'd heard a lot about, Ajay Patel, in Madhya Pradesh, in his little village. 2 days drive out to his taxi drive, 2 days taxi drive from Rajasthan, where I was staying, Udaipur, all the way by taxi, 2 days out to his village. And I met Ajay, and that was really simply amazing. And the next morning, Ajay woke up, and I found out that one of Ajay's gurus was Jesus, which was I was really amazed. And Ajay told me that in that night, Jesus told Ajay that he had a message for me to tell him, Manamurti, that Jesus had a message for me that he didn't turn his back on me. I turned my back on Jesus, and that there was some angels helping me from that day onwards. There's some angels helping me. So that was that experience. I just wanted to mention those few experiences about Jesus. And I've got a couple of other notes here. And something also too, I mentioned that, I had that dream seeing those hands, and it rang a bell in my mind about autobiography of a yogi. Paramahansa Yogananda went out to meet the Catholic stigmatists. Stigmatists, they're the ones that they suffer the crucifixion of Jesus. So Therese Newman, every Friday, you'll read it in the chapter in there. I forget which chapter it was, 39, I think. Chapter 39, Therese Newman. Paramahansa Yogananda went to Bavaria, near Germany, somewhere in Germany, to meet Therese Newman. And you'll read it in that book, Autobiography of a Yogi, #1 bestseller, anything to do with yoga. And every Friday she went into this trance, Therese Newman, and she got the crown of thorns, stigmata in the hands, and this is what I saw in this dream, right? The hands. So that's what I reread that chapter on Autobiography of a Yogi this week, which was a bit of a message to think about Jesus because it was Christmas. So that's what I've been doing, and also that visual, that altered state that I had, Samyama, right? Is beyond pratyahara, because you can't get into proper visualization. And I'm a pretty hopeless visualizer. Yeah, that's why I work with prana, the Kriya Yoga, pranayama, hatha yoga. I work with prana, not with the mind. I want to conquer the mind via prana. That's my method. Um, but this time, my visualization was perfect. And across there's stages, in Raja Yoga, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, stage 5, right? 6, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. So it's a flow, right? So this is altered state. This altered state was just mind blowing. Like I remember as an 11-year-old kid, Mum was doing yoga, and I've spoken about this before. And I had an altered state. Then I went out of my body. I discovered my astral body. Then I floated out above my brothers. But this is the next one. Like that was 1968 when I was 11-year-old. I was 27, 1984. And so I want you everybody, any listeners that get to see this video, I want you just to think for a while that what's a statue? A statue is an inanimate, supposed inanimate object, right? It's not alive, supposedly inanimate. Yet I projected my consciousness inside of it, and I was viewing outside from inside it. So I projected my consciousness. My body was back in the room, right? So back in the yoga room, my body was there, right? So my DNA was there in that room, right? So the statue of Jesus didn't have my DNA in it, but yet I could project. So what's remote viewing? Just have a think about what remote viewing is. So your consciousness finds a target, zooms in, it can see everything. Okay, so that's a bit of a trendy topic these days. There's a lot of people, whistleblowers, been talking about remote viewing. So I didn't want to talk really much about remote viewing, but I want to talk about the stone. The stone has consciousness, right? So a statue. People talk about form, idol worship, form, and duality, non-duality. I did a video on that last year. Duality, non-duality, and form, no form, without form. So there's always a lot of religious bickering on that, unless you know what you're talking about. And so I wanted to talk about that. So form, statue, right, or picture, or anything, form, right. So what is matter, right? Matter has consciousness, right? And what we're learning now, there's a lot of people talking in physics. I mean, I know nothing about physics really, but I'm interested and I'm learning a little bit about it. I've done a few papers on advanced astrophysics in the last few months, and I'm learning a little bit about it. And consciousness is everywhere, So where isn't consciousness? Like, what happens when you astral travel? What's the astral body? What's the cause of body? So what's Kundalini? Like, no one knows what Kundalini is, and they never will know what's the totality, right? Same as you'll never know 100% about God, right? You might experience God, but you'll never know 100% about God. The designer of all this, right? This dimension and every dimension, and same goes for Kundalini. Right, we talk about chakras, right? We're learning little bits and pieces about chakras and astral body, cause of body, etc., etc. Remote viewing. Read the Yoga Sutras if you want to know about the cities. And that was pretty. I just wanted to just get people thinking about that consciousness in everything, right? And so if it's in everything, it's in every person, right? So, why isn't there more unity? That's what yoga's about, isn't it? Unity. And the highest stage of yoga is unity. That's what yoga is, unity. It's not duality, although we deal with duality every day. Everything's duality. Why do we practice yoga for? Well, you have to awaken Shakti, Shiva, Shakti, right? That's duality, right? But when they meet, it's non-duality, right? So the cosmic meeting, that's the highest stages of samadhi. So there's different types of samadhi, but when you get to the bliss state, Anandamaya kosha, that's true non-duality. So I don't know what else I wanted to talk about tonight. I just wanted to sort of make this talk around Christmas time, or the festive season was sort of really the holiday seasons around Jesus, and what to me it is anyway. And just wanted to tell that story about that Christian school. And I've sort of gone through everything I wanted to say, and yeah, this is a little picture of Babaji. One of my friends gave to me, Jagdish. He sent it to me, an Indian friend from Bangalore. He sent it to me after I took him to meet Shai Bindu in Varanasi, Shai Bindu Lahiri, who's just recently passed away. So, Shai Bindu, Babaji, and Jesus. So just remember, you mightn't understand, but they're working together, I'm telling you. I get a little bit of communication every now and then from both. And if you read Autobiography of a Yogi, you'll see in chapter 33, Paramahansa Yogananda has named the chapter Babaji, the Yogi Christ of modern India. Right. The Yogi Christ, Babaji, right? So I think Babaji, who was born in the year 203 AD, I think he might have met Jesus. And there's a number of yogis that, like Swami Satyaswarananda Giri, who did 12 years in the Himalayas, meditating in a kutir or a hut in the Himalayas, Donagiri Hill. And I think he said in one of his books, I've got half a dozen or more of his books, he met Jesus up there and Babaji, but they work together. And there's a number of other masters that have spoken about that. They're working together for some sort of higher mission. And anyway, that's all I really wanted to say tonight. And just something about Jesus and Christianity. It's there's a lot of rituals in the Catholic Church, for instance. There's a lot of rituals, and I wouldn't be surprised, if they got their ideas from the tantric, some of the ideas, because tantric's pretty ritualistic, and the yoga is pretty ritualistic in the older days of yoga, and tantra is an ancient culture, and I'm sure they're related in some ways, but so well, a lot of the debates these days are monotheism and polytheism. Many gods, one God. One God, one Savior, many. So, there's always debates going on, idol worship, duality, non-duality. So that'll continue, right? So just don't worry too much about it. But, what the real thing is the chakras and kundalini and consciousness. So, all the rest is just what we hear about and learn about. But what's important is, I think Paramahansa Yogananda nailed it, with Kriya Yoga and Lahiri Masai. And anyway, it's been nice talking to you, and hope everybody has a wonderful new year. I'll be back in, when is it? End of January, I'm doing one talk, and in April, another talk, and in July, another talk. So that's it for now. So hope everyone has a wonderful evening and all the best. Namaste, and wishing you the best for the new year, 2025. Bring it on.